All right. So, hello everyone. John Matrix here. I don't really, do these kinds of videos, discussion videos, reaction videos, whatever you want to call them. But after the last Game of Thrones episode and a lot of discussions going on in some discords that I'm in and with friends and whatnot, I thought about making a reaction video and I wasn't going to do it, but some people, I'd posted in one of the discords that was thinking about it, and so some people decided to go ahead and do it. So here we are. So I'm going to start by just saying that, I wouldn't consider myself like a super Game of Thrones fan. I would consider myself an average Game of Thrones fan. My perspective is from the show alone. I haven't read any of the books. I only know some things from the books and some information from some like interview videos and things that I've seen from George Martin. So my perspective is from the books alone. I haven't rewatched all of the series in quite a while, so some of my knowledge of the series is a little fuzzy. So anything I say that could be related to the books or some of the past episodes, if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's plenty of people who can correct me. I just want to kind of give my thoughts on the episode itself and kind of Game of Thrones in general, I guess, since season 7 and now. So, starting with just the season 8 episode, and I'm going to try to keep my thoughts as succinct as possible. I tend to go off on tangents when I'm talking, so I'll try to be succinct as possible. And obviously, there's going to be spoilers because we're discussing the stuff. So, looking at the episode alone, which I believe the title was The Long Night, if you take it, just as a self-contained episode and not like in context with anything else with Game of Thrones, I thought overall it was a good episode. I thought the overall battle was a cool battle. I thought the fights with the dragons were cool. There's some very cinematic scenes. There's a lot of little things, with just the fights alone that you can nitpick. A lot of the tactics that they use to try to defend themselves, or potentially the lack thereof of defending themselves against the walkers and stuff like that. But I'm not really gonna get like super into that. I'm more of just gonna talk about just the story in general. So, the episode itself I thought was good, but when you then put it into the context of the entire show, um, what they did, with the Night King and how they concluded that storyline, I thought was just absolutely terrible. I thought it was absolutely terrible because the walkers, from the show's perspective, the White Walkers, that's been the main story of the show since the beginning. Like the very first scene in the very first episode is about the walkers killing some wildlings. You see the dead bodies, they get reanimated, and then some of those Night's Watchmen get killed, and one of them escapes and betrays his duty and his oath, and he gets killed. Before he dies, he warns everyone that the walkers are coming. And so throughout the entire series, it's pretty much been like that's really the main story. They keep building it up in the background while they have all these squabbles between the different houses. And it seems like, the overall story of the show, anyway, is kind of setting it up for, all these petty human squabbles really don't matter. Can they, get past all these petty differences for, a common good to fight this, threat to mankind? And the whole show has been about this looming darkness that's gonna be the end of not just mankind but basically life itself. Like the walkers are death incarnate, and then we get one battle and that's it, they're dead. And it just really kind of goes to show that I don't have any kind of affiliation with anyone involved with creating the show or at HBO. Obviously, I'm just some dude here on the internet. Um, but it seems to me that without the input of George Martin, with I don't think he's been a creative consultant on the show since like season 5. As far as I understand, the end of season 5 is where the books are at, where John died, as far as I know. So without that source material and without his input, it's pretty clear that HBO or the writers or both don't really have the confidence in themselves to continue the series in a way that is going to continue the legacy, I guess, of what they've already done with Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones as a show is like the biggest show we have. You know, it rivals anything that is out in the theaters. You know, it rivals the the Marvel Cinematic Universe is pretty much like the biggest series of movies that's going on right now, and this pretty much rivals that. You know, for a lot of people. It's the highest grossing TV series ever, and I'm pretty sure it's the highest award winning TV series ever. So I feel like without George's input, they don't want to tarnish the legacy of Game of Thrones, and so they really are just trying to rush to finish it before they lose their viewership and before they, like I said, quote unquote, tarnish the legacy of the show. And um, yeah, so they're just trying to finish it as quickly as possible. I mean, last season felt extremely rushed, you know, with the story. There's so many plot holes and so many inconsistencies in the writing and in the show now. I mean, you know, Jon Snow went like the entire length of Westeros like three times over or something in the last season with his traveling, and the White Walkers apparently were just like, you know, sitting there chilling up in the north, ordering some pizza, you know, having a beer, sitting back, you know, taking their time. But, you know, I mean, there's just so many ways that they could expand on the show. There's so much information, so much lore with the characters and the setting, and it's such an interesting setting. And it's just a shame that we as fans aren't really going to get, I think, a true outcome that we kind of deserve for, you know, following the show in the series for as long as we have. I mean, you know, they could do another 2 or 3 seasons with just battling the White Walkers. I mean, they could give us more information on the Night King and even the generals themselves, and they could, you know, create, you know, personalities for the Night King and the generals, and they could have all these battles where they're you know, losing territory and gaining territory and fighting the generals and taking the generals out themselves and trying to outmaneuver and outthink the generals and the Night King and blah blah blah, and really build up the peril and really show us like how much of a threat the White Walkers really are to humanity and to life itself. And we never really got that. Like, to me, the most powerful scene in any episode in Game of Thrones was at Hardhome at the very end when everyone's dead and the Night King is walking out onto the dock, and you know he's staring at Jon Snow and Jon Snow staring back, and you just see him raise his hands and all the dead come back to life. And it's like, you get this ominous sense of, what the fuck are we gonna do against this? How are we supposed to even fight this? Like, and then you don't get that like really ever again in the show ever. You know, so like, and I just think it's a shame that we don't get that. You know, um, and I could go into more details about different things in the episode. I mean, you know, Bran feels like he's just a plot gimmick. The Night Walkers really just feel like kind of a plot gimmick now. And it's kind of clear that they just wanted to turn Cersei into the main villain, and they wanted to get past this White Walker thing and deal with it because it's something they set up. You know, from some of the interviews I've seen with George Martin, you know, like, he really, it seems like throughout the series, you know, and again, this is where my memory is a little fuzzy because I haven't watched things in a while, but he was setting up kind of like this duelist system of like gods or bad guys or something like that, where you had, you know, the Night King and the Walkers on one side, and like the Lord of Light and this religion on the other side, kind of fighting each other. 'Cause, you know, Melisandre in one of the episodes, I believed, talked about the Lord of Light and Azor Ahai, and he's the, you know, a prince that was promised, and you know was the one that defeated the Walkers, I think, back in the day, and you know ended the Long Night. And I know in the books they go into detail about it a little bit more, I think, where, you know, he had to sacrifice his one true love, and he plunged his sword in her heart, and when he brought it out, it was, I guess, lit on flame, and it gave him the power to defeat the Night King or end the Long Night or something like that. You know, so it really, and they got into this in the show, you know, for a little bit with the whole, you know, during season 2 or 3 with Stannis, and you know, so it seems like he was kind of setting up this, you know, on the one side you have, you know, the Long Night with the White Walkers and them being like literal death incarnate, but then you also have, you know, this Lord of Light, and he's all about, you know, blood magic and sacrifice to get power. So it's like, which side is really the better side to be with? and I feel like that's part of the dimension of the whole Fire and Ice, a Song of Fire and Ice thing, that he'd set up. So I don't know. I'm in general, pretty disappointed with where Game of Thrones has gone. It's Bran. We've never gotten anything really, from Bran. Bran was pretty much just a character that is there to disseminate information, as we needed it, basically. We never really see any of his powers other than him going to the past to find out story plot things that he gives us. Um, and then, in the second episode of this current season, he's just like, I know what the Night King wants. He wants to come kill me because he wants to erase the memory of the earth. So just use me as bait. How do you know this? How have you found this information out? Expand on this a little bit more. Why is the Night King wanting to do this? Because, they showed us that the Night King was created by the children of the forest to defend themselves against the first, men of Westeros. So, like, why did the children lose control of the Night King and the Walkers? And, why is it that he all of a sudden wants that directive, to do that? Where did all this come from? There's so many other things that they could do to expand on the story and keep going with the story and give us, I guess, a more complete ending that I just don't think we're gonna get. As far as it goes, I'm pretty much kind of done with the show. I'm still gonna watch it just to see how it finishes. I still like Game of Thrones as a show. I think it's a good show. I'm sure that when it's done and the Blu-ray sets out, I'm sure I'll buy it and it'll be a show that I go back and watch because it's a great show. It has great moments. Um, as far as the season 3 episode goes, when talking with my friends, I pretty much called. I didn't call like specific details, but in discussions that we'd had leading up to it, I pretty much said that I knew Melisandre was going to come back somehow. She had to have some kind of role still in it, just because of what the comments she said in the previous season that she was going to die in the land of Westeros and she still had a role to play, and she wasn't in the 2 previous episodes. And lo and behold, she just appears at the beginning and is there. And I mean, it was cool for her lighting up, the Dothraki blades, and it was a cool scene with them riding in and then all the flames going out, and then her, you know lighting the pit on fire and whatnot when they couldn't light it on fire. But it's like, I mean, it just feels like forced and kind of pointless. Like there's really no meaning to it. So I mean, I knew that she still was going to come back and still had a role to play. And I pretty much called that there were really going to be no significant characters that died. I mean, and that's, I guess, arguable. In my opinion, if you were to create a list of like a tier list of characters, Theon is pretty much a B-list character now. He really hasn't like had any major plot issues going on since they started the whole Reek storyline with him. At most, when he was at his highest was the whole situation where he faked, burning Bran and the Stark kids and taking Winterfell. But since then, really, he's kind of turned into more of a B-list character. Jorah, in my opinion, has kind of always been a B-list character. His plot has always really just been about trying to prove his love and his loyalty to Daenerys, and he got the death that he wanted, protecting her and proving his loyalty to her, that he would go to any ends to her. But really, he hasn't had any kind of anything major to contribute to the story that progressed the story, going forward. Unless my memory is bad on that, like, obviously correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or whatever. But to me, he's always pretty much been a B-list character. And then Beric Dondarrion, he's, in my opinion, a B or C-list character. He really, again, hasn't had much to contribute to the plot. He's always just kind of been there as an extra man to add to the fight and talk about the Lord of Light and, progress that kind of storyline, which they never really did anything with, pretty much after they brought Jon back. I mean, that was kind of the thing that everyone speculated, was that, with that storyline, Melisandre was never able to resurrect anyone. Her faith was wavering, and then all of a sudden she brings Jon back. And, is he Azor Ahai? Is he the resurrection of Azor Ahai? Is he the new prince that was promised? And so far they haven't done anything with that. There's still 3 episodes left, but I doubt they're really going to do much more with that, with how much story they have to wrap up. So that whole storyline with Beric Dondarrion and the Lord of Light thing that really never went anywhere. So for me, he's a C or B tier character, and Ed is just kind of like the last connection of the Night's Watchman, because John's not really a Night Watchman anymore. He's surpassed that. He's really the center main character. The story really is about right now Jon, Daenerys, and Cersei and their little triangle of things going on, and that's kind of really what the show's about, in my opinion, right now. Um, but I mean, when you watch the episode, you see so many times that Brienne and Jamie and Sam and Tormund and a few others are just getting overwhelmed, and they didn't die, and they just didn't die. And then they should have, in my opinion, and a couple of different scenes. I mean, the very last scene where you see John, running into the castle and he's trying to get past the dragon, you see him look over at Sam, and Sam is just kind of laying back on the ground, just fighting for his life, and he doesn't help him. It's like, well, Sam should have died, but he didn't. I don't think Gilly in the crypt died. Again, she's another kind of C tier character. She's not really done much to progress the story. Um, so I mean, they're really, in discussions with some of the friends I had, I figured during this episode there really wasn't going to be any significant deaths or any significant plot points resolved, and there really wasn't, other than just the fact that the Night King died and Arya was the one that killed him. And I mean, I'm okay with Arya killing him. I think it's a little anticlimactic with how they did it. They've been building up the showdown between Jon and the Night King, and it looked like we were going to get that fight, and the Night King just resurrect the dead guys around him, which would be kind of what the Night King probably would do. I give them props for that, because if you're the Night King and you're in that position, you have this power. Why bother fighting one on one when you can just raise an army of the dead to take care of it for you? Why risk losing that way? So I mean, I get it, that actually does kind of fit. It sucks that we don't get that battle, that one-on-one fight between them. Um, but you know, I don't know. It's just in my opinion, it's kind of sad with what's happened to the show and with where it is, and with what's gonna happen. From what I understand, I think it was contractually obligated that they end the show the same way the books are supposed to end. That was supposed to be a thing that George had, but I honestly, at this point, I just don't see how that could really happen, maybe, unless just everyone just dies. Unless just everyone just somehow dies. Which is possible, I guess, but like I said, for me, I'm kinda done with the show. I'm gonna finish watching it just to see how it ends. And looking back on Game of Thrones, it's a great show. It had great moments, but I just don't think we're gonna get the resolution and ending that we as, you know, fans who are dedicated to the show are really gonna kinda get. So those are overall kind of my thoughts on the show and the series so far. Feel free to continue the discussion in the comments. I'm going to post this in my Discord. So if you want to come to my Discord, the link will be down below in the info section. And you can feel free to, come in and discuss that in my Discord if you want to, etc., etc. So, thanks for watching. This is kind of my first, like, reaction discussion, kind of video. If this is something that people enjoyed and want some more of, I'll discuss some more things about other movies and shows, because I am a big movie buff nerd and TV show person. So if you want some more of this kind of stuff, feel free in the comments to let me know, and I'll start adding it to my current YouTube channel, or maybe make another YouTube channel based just on this stuff. So anyway, thanks guys. And yeah, that's my thoughts on where we're at with Game of Thrones. So hope you enjoy, and I will see you guys, on the next one.